Welcome back to my space and thoughts on all things health. We have been discussing mental health with our very wonderful and beautiful Dr. Rose Misati. This is episode 3 from our 4-part series. And again, as I always say, go back, watch 1 and 2, then come and follow along. So, karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
Today we are twinsing. We have the same colors.
Yeah.
So now,
coincidence.
Exactly, but great minds. So today we want to discuss about, in the topic of childhood trauma, how childhood trauma affects parenting, if it affects parenting, and in this parenting, is there intergenerational trauma?
Thank you so much. That's a very important question. And I always say that if only parents can get to the point where they heal to the point of stability, we can say that we are breaking the intergenerational trauma. You know, if we all say it ends with me, we can at least get another generation that doesn't need to be so traumatized. We say trauma is inevitable, but then we can have a generation that doesn't have to be completely destabilized by trauma. So let me share with you some telltale signs that a parent is struggling with trauma, childhood trauma. Now they're adults. If you find a parent who is a perfectionist, so the parent is imposing unrealistic expectations on their child. That a young child is being made to have the room so neat. Always. And yet, you know, children generally, by nature,
are messy.
They are messy. Let's say they avoid pain and they enjoy pleasure. So if you say, make your bed, they want to throw things there and go and play. But then a parent is saying, no. You know, the duvet or the blanket, the sheet is not well, whatever. They want a child to always be neat, orderly, and organized. That's a parent who is struggling with trauma. Unhealed, that is, unhealed trauma. If you find a parent who is comparing children unfavorably, like the parent is saying, why can't you be like your sister? Your sister wouldn't do this, your brother wouldn't do this. So they are comparing, and then they compare their children even with the neighbor's children. They go for a school meeting.
But wasn't that all of us when we were growing up?
Trauma. You see, we say trauma is universal and trauma is individual. So we say universal because all of us experience. And it's individual because it affects people differently based on a lot of other factors. So trauma is universal.
Because we all told so-and-so's child does not go home late, they do this, they perform well at school, and you're just here, what's wrong with you?
So compared unfavorably.
Okay.
You know, you can always communicate the same thing to a child without referring to somebody else. You know, I used to tell my children to be like one of their siblings. Then one time one of them faced me and they said, but I'm not him. Why do you want me to be him?
Exactly.
Then I was like, I tried to baptize it. I was like, we can learn lessons. He said, no, I'm not interested.
Wow.
Because I've empowered them also to speak up to me because I know I'm struggling. You know, I've been healing from childhood trauma.
Yes.
So now you can always communicate to a child without referring to somebody else. That's how even parents fuel sibling rivalry. When they are always trying to model this child, who is not perfect also, but they are trying to model it
as a better child.
As a better child, as the model child. It puts undue pressure. And then parents who have not healed from their childhood trauma, you find that they overindulge their children. Like if they grew up in extreme poverty, like the one we said, you don't get adequate food, you have no shelter.
When you're sick, no
shelter.
care.
When you're sick, no care. You find this parent says, I suffered, let my child enjoy. So they overindulge. If a child is asking, I want this, they just give. So the child never learns that, oh, actually you can lack. So they overindulge. They want to give the child everything. And yet, everybody appreciates something they struggle for. Okay?
That's true.
You will find another parent told me that they have bought clothes. This child has clothes and toys that are full, separate in their own room. And then I was asking why. They said, hey, the way I suffered, I had no clothes. I want my child to have every color of shoe and dress that they want. They want this, they get. They're invited for a birthday, they bought for a dress for that birthday. So that's unhealed childhood trauma talking. Because now the parent is trying to rescue themselves in the life of this child. You get it? So they are buying for themselves the things they really lacked in the life of the child.
So
and they
it
end up
could be the
breaking.
same as your parents trying to live their dream through you.
That is it. That is it.
No, you need to be a doctor because that is what you
And
need
in
to.
fact, that goes back to the first one of perfectionist, because the parent wants the child to be this. Yeah, maybe they were never that doctor because of whatever circumstances, or they never went to that school they desired to go to. So they're like, you must go to that school. So they are meeting their own need in the life of this child.
The child is feeling so hurt but cannot say.
Exactly. And who told you, by the way, the child wants that? Who told you they want to be a doctor? Who told you they want to be an engineer? Who told you? You can't decide
decided
for
for
them.
them.
Exactly. And then unhealed parents also, sometimes they overprotect and rescue their child. Like if they hear, for example, a child has been bullied in the playground, they run there and they want to give the bully a piece of their fist or a piece of their mind. I think fist is more like it. Instead of empowering the child with assertiveness skills, and they're like, you go back and do this.
Yeah.
But if they feel it's out of control, they can ask the child, would you like me to intervene? But now parents who are unhealed, they quickly jump to
They
rescue.
step in.
They even rescue grown children. Have you seen even some parents running to fix their children's marriages? They go, they sit them down, they're like, you know,
African
this.
parents.
Yes, Ati, don't do this to my son, don't do this to my daughter. And your daughter is 35 and your son is 40. You're saying, my boy, you're not cooking for my boy. You know, that's unhealed child
That's
trauma.
a sore topic. Don't even want
And
to get
people
into it.
think that we are being loving. You know, they think, I've seen even where I work, people come to seek for attachment for their children. Imagine your child is in college and they're coming to tell me, oh, my child needs that. I'm like, wait, how old is your child? 21. Please go.
Let
Tell
the
them to
child
come.
and look
Let
for
this child
themselves.
come. Because these are not adults.
Yeah.
They need to come. So the parents run to rescue the child, and the child feels like, I'm so incapable. That's why my mother, my father has to come to rescue me. So I just wanted to share. Those are some of the telltale signs. I think we have seen ourselves somewhere there.
Yeah, of course.
So now, how can a childhood trauma, how can it influence or affect
the parenting?
Yeah. Number one, when somebody has been traumatized and they are always in this hypervigilant state and they are releasing the stress hormones, and when they are pregnant, these stress hormones actually pass to the child. You get what I'm saying? So the mother is having these stress hormones bathing their every cell of the body. They actually pass in the uterus into the child. So a child can be born stressed because of the maternal stress, because of the mother having been stressed. So you'll find a child is born, you know, with that.
So they're born stressed, or are they triggered, or what happens?
So what happens is that they are born predisposed to have anxiety or depression or whatever. They are predisposed. Wow. But again, as we are saying, this trauma loads the gun, but then there's a lifestyle which pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
So the child is born with a tendency. We call it a proclivity or a predisposition to that, because of that is what the parent was going through. Because there's something we call the communication that happens between the mother and the child. You know, and then also when the child is breastfeeding, you know, they are breastfeeding.
Yes.
So they will actually breastfeed some of those stress hormones and what have you. Because when we are stressed because of what you've gone through, always being hypervigilant, we are releasing hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. So they end it.
So I could be experiencing depression because
of maternal.
Predisposed to it, and then maybe something triggered it.
That is it. As
my parent was raising me.
Exactly. That's why it's important for us to take history. When you are taking history, maybe you have a child who is struggling with something. I always ask, what was the condition of the mother when she was expectant? Because sometimes you find she got pregnant out of, you know, the surprise, the oops babies.
Yes.
So all through she was stressed, and maybe some of them wanted to do an abortion. So the child is born with that tendency to feel rejected. Yes, yes.
This is heavy.
So the other one, let me not go so deep on that. So the other one, let me also say that when a child has been born, there are verbal and non-verbal cues. The way a parent communicates. For example, if you are born in the minority, maybe you are an immigrant, you will find your parents saying something like, hey, you know us. You know those of us who don't belong. So the child internalizes.
So they know they don't belong.
They know they don't belong because of the messages that the parent was passing. And this has been studied. It's called what is it called? Post-traumatic slave syndrome, whereby you find those who have been born under systemic slavery, like
The black
yes,
Americans.
yes. In fact, they call black individuals and people of color. BIPOC. Black individuals and people of color. You will
Yes,
find
BIPOC,
it in
yes, we know
psychology
about it.
texts.
Yes.
You know about it.
Yes.
So you'll find the children are born in that. It's being passed in the way the parents communicate and even in the way they do their things. That you know us, you know us, you know us.
You know, as black people,
Exactly.
we shouldn't
As
dress
black
like
people,
this.
we should
do this and do
so
this.
they put ceilings or limits for their children because of their skin color. And then another thing is that when a parent has gone through unhealed trauma, they're emotionally absent because they're in survival mode.
The full time.
Exactly. So they are not there to emotionally connect. So you'll find even when a child is playing with mud, instead of the parents going down to play with the child, they're like, now you're making yourself dirty. Get out of there. Because, you know, for them, they're looking, they're like, hey, and who is going to wash those clothes and the soap and what? And you need to behave. I remember at some point, my mom used to tell us something like, behave as an adult. And that time you're 7 years. I remember up to date.
Really?
I had to behave like an adult. You know, in mother tongue, there's a way it even sounds very deep. But you know, she was going through a lot herself. So I get it. So the parent is not emotionally present when they're going through trauma to be there for the child. Another way in which parenting is affected by childhood trauma is that people who have gone through trauma, as we saw in relationships, you will find that they traumatize each other. They are either hurting each other, they are violent towards each other, and you know this affects parenting because we said when children are in a household where even a member is being abused, they take it very personally.
Yes.
And also it is possible that parents who have gone through trauma can also be abusive to their own children. Because another time that somebody gets triggered other than in a romantic relationship is when you get your own children. Let me tell you, your children have the capacity to be to give you the most happiness and also to bring the greatest anger and sorrow. Because they trigger you like nothing. So if you have unhealed trauma, it will manifest as your parenting. Because you may end up abusing your own children. That's why people say, we're beaten and we turned out okay. So they end up beating their children mercilessly.
Because they know they'll turn out okay.
Exactly. And yet, did you really turn out okay?
No, you didn't. But you don't know
Exactly.
you're not.
Some say, I was beaten. No one is going to touch my child. So they overindulge. They spoil that child rotten. Because even when the child does something, kadadi, akinono fanye hivo,
and you're 25.
Kama mi. You know, so they end up spoiling the child by not being that authority figure. Because they think, hey, me, I want to be very friendly to my child. So even when the child is pushing you, like, aki kadadi, please, you stop. You know, so you are not even the parent to that child.
Yeah.
So those are the ways in which trauma can affect parenting. In fact, ask me the next question because I think there's something else that you may want to ask.
Yes,
there's
a question I wanted to ask about. We said in last week's episode that our romantic relationships are affected. And you said even as in parenting, my childhood trauma will affect my relationship with my spouse. So what if I realize that I have married somebody who reminds me of maybe my father was an alcoholic, and so I've realized I've married somebody because of childhood trauma I had. What do I do?
That's a good question.
Do I go and divorce? Do I look at every morning like this is not where I want to be? Yeah,
that's a good point. And you know, as we have seen, nobody chose to be traumatized. Okay? Nobody chose to be traumatized. In fact, there's one aspect before I come to your question that I want to mention on intergenerational trauma. Trauma actually changes our genes. It has been studied. You can check.
Your gene.
Yes. It is called epigenetic alteration. Check it. Epigenetic alteration. Trauma affects the way our genes express themselves. You know, it's like we are born with these genes and some can be switched off. Some genes can be switched on, depending on the environment. So you will find when somebody has been traumatized, particular gene expression is affected. In simple terms, epigenetic alteration. And these genes can now pass to the second, third, and fourth generation. So the children inherit trauma from their parents. So we're all
predisposed, a whole lineage.
Yes.
Of a family.
Exactly. It has even been studied among children.
So we all get diabetes not because of eating wrong, but because it came.
We inherited the genes. But remember, there has to be a lifestyle to trigger that.
Yes.
So you will inherit those genes that are defective.
Something must trigger it.
But then unless you do something to trigger, you can also choose to switch them off, to switch that expression. It has been studied that children of Holocaust survivors, children and grandchildren, they're actually more predisposed to depression and mental illness. You can check that. It has been studied. So now come to that point of now you realize.
Yeah.
I want you to look at this person with empathy and know that just like they were your unfinished business, you are also their unfinished business. So you were marrying
So
each
we have
other.
married each other with our hearts in mind.
Exactly.
Not knowing.
Exactly. You've heard of something called trauma bonds. So you're bonded at the point of your trauma bonds. So don't look at the person and you're saying, oh, they are so damaged. You are also damaged. But maybe you've started the journey of awareness.
Yes.
So focus on your journey and get healed to the point of stability and keep growing. And then ask yourself, what is at stake? Can I live with this person? If you're being abused, now live. That one I must say without fear of contradiction. If you're in a place where you are being abused, physically, emotionally,
whatever,
let's talk about physically.
Okay.
You live because you don't know whether the next time is going to lead to your death. If you're being abused emotionally, manipulation, criticism, what you now put healthy boundaries, whereby you say, you know what, you will not talk to me like that. The next time you talk to me like that, I will physically separate myself. So next time they still go ahead and talk to you like that, you move from that room to another. You say, as I told you, I will not continue being in that space where you talk to me that way because it hurts me. So you physically remove yourself. Then they begin to see, you're no longer tolerating that.
Yeah.
So put boundaries, healthy boundaries in case
So boundary setting is a skill.
That is a skill actually in the journey of healing from childhood trauma, because when a child has been traumatized, their boundaries have been violated.
Yes.
So they never learned to set boundaries.
Healthy boundaries.
Yeah, because again, healthy boundaries is a skill that is taught by parents. But how do parents teach this skill when they are traumatized, when they are in survival mode? So boundary setting. So you have realized this. So put boundaries, focus on your own healing. You may suggest to your partner that I've gone through this and it's really helpful. Is it something you may want to consider? And be there to support them. You know, you can offer the support.
So keyword is suggest, don't force.
No. You don't force. Now you are violating somebody's boundaries when you're forcing.
You know,
you don't
doing this, we need to change. I'm on this journey, we need to do it
dragging
together.
them to therapy.
Yeah, thank you.
No. Now that's violating somebody's boundaries. You suggest, like, I've done this and it's really helpful. Maybe you have also noticed some changes in me. Is it something you may want to consider? You know, you can give the contact of whoever you've been the journey. You can give resources, materials. You can say, you know, I can pay for you if you're interested. You can be the accountability partner if they are willing. But again, remember, everybody seeks their own healing when they are ready. I always tell my clients, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
So you can't force anybody to be ready. So you may suggest. And then be very honest with yourself. Ask yourself, what are the pros and the cons of me remaining in this relationship? Is it working for me? But I always tell people, just my personal value, if the other person is not abusive to you, you can look at them with empathy and compassion and you can live with them. Because remember, at that point, you are also their unfinished business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I married them knowing that.
Exactly. Okay, maybe you didn't know.
No, knowing that this is who I want to be with and so I'm changing.
Yes.
So I shouldn't force it down.
Exactly. No one forced you to marry them.
No.
As in, it was a willing buyer, willing seller.
Yes.
Unless it was a child bride. But most of the time, it's a willing buyer, willing seller. Yeah.
So we need to have empathy.
We need to have empathy. But what I have seen is that when one partner heals, either they compromise and decide to live with this person, just what we have said, empathy. Another scenario I've seen is that the relationship breaks. Because now you find you have grown so much, you can no longer connect. And some people actually begin resenting their unhealed partner. You begin resenting them.
So your healing journey can cause you...
You need to be aware. So the container, we call it the container, the relationship can break because you now realize, oh my goodness. Because you are like dark, you have healed, you are like light. So light and darkness have nothing in common.
Yes.
Another thing that I found very beautiful is that it actually, the healing of one person influences the other one to also heal their life. Because some people have called me, mostly men, and they are like, what have you done to my wife? She has changed. She's assertive without being disrespectful. She's doing things that she would never do before. She's now even more courageous. Please, I just want whatever you've done to my wife to do it to me. It's so beautiful.
Amazing.
And
So
that's
it
why-
rubs off.
Exactly. And that's why I feel patience, empathy, compassion, you
It's a
just
better
never
option.
know. You just never know. It may be that even that person will embrace their own healing, and it will be a beautiful journey that you grow together.
Wow, that is amazing,
yes,
guys. So, yes, childhood trauma does affect parenting, and there can be intergenerational trauma, but it's up to me to decide
That
what
it
to
ends
do with
with
it,
me.
that it ends with me,
Yeah.
and will not be passed down to my
Exactly,
children.
because whatever happens to you is not it's not your fault.
Yes.
But what you decide to do with it, it is your
my
responsibility.
choice. Okay.
Exactly, your choice. And you always have a choice.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Guys, she
It's
has
a deep topic.
It is a deep topic. If your parents out there, I wish and pray that you would reach down and think and see if you are going through you have been through something that is affecting you and how you parent.
Yeah.
There's intergenerational trauma from your parent or your grandparent and how you do things that is now affecting your children. And then work on it.
Exactly.
Work on it. So, guys, if you'd like to, number one, reach out to her. I'm going to put her comments in the description box, and you can reach out to her. If you'd like to see her for a session, she's available. She's a professional at it. She's done it for so long, and I'm sure whatever situation you're in, she can help you. So thank you so much. Next week is our last episode, and we'll just be able to see if I have experienced childhood trauma. Is there hope for me?
What next?
What next? Yeah. So thank you guys so much for staying along with us to the end. And remember, big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends if you think it's something that would be good for them. See you next week. Bye.